across behind, yeah, and then across Graham on this side.
Hi Jesus. Could you please explain what happens between the periods of time when you choose to engage and to attempt to work through, and then something happens and then you no longer do that and you'll flip and then potentially flip back again at a later date?
Well, maybe choosing to engage until a point where you now stop means that your initial motivation to engage wasn't pure, right?
It's a really good point.
Yeah, so I would say there's a number of problems with that. Like, so if you do something for a little while and then something gets difficult and so you stop. So an example for you would be you do something for a little while and the spirits who are in addiction with you say, Maddie, I don't want that you to do that because otherwise our relationship will change. And so they try to put pressure on you. You go, this pressure's too much, I'm stopping. Right? Then did you really want to do it like first?
No.
No. And this is the thing, is that in the relationship with God, we get to see ourselves as we truly are, right? And that's tricky because a lot of times we think we want to think that we're putting God first, or we want to think that we're progressing, and we want to think that we're making changes. But frequently we only make changes to the point where something becomes tough. And once it becomes tough, what do we do then?
Give up and go back to what we feel is easy.
Yeah. Which means that thing that we felt was easy is what we're putting first.
And that's our God.
That's our God. Makes sense? So now we're not loving God first, we're loving whatever the thing is that was easy first. That's what we're doing. We're putting that first in our lives. And this is a very strong reason why most people do things for a little while, but when, as the saying goes, the going gets tough, as the song goes, and the going gets tough, like, what do? Most of us don't get going. We do the opposite of that. We go, oh, the memories, the pain, oh, the suffering, oh, it's all too bad now, it's all too hard. And because we haven't got in our heart the love of God first, we're just going to give up the love of God for the sake of whatever the problem is.
Yeah, I guess the question is how to deal with that, and what do I need to do?
Well, this is something we'll discuss over the course of the next 2 days, hopefully. Yeah, what do I do about this? So at this stage, this morning, what I'm trying to do with you is just set the scene for why the discussion is important, and set the scene as to what's going on inside of myself as to why we do it this way, right? And I'm trying to get you to appreciate the underlying causes and reasons why we choose to do what we do rather than loving God first. And I find it a very fascinating conversation in its own right, to be honest, because each of you have individual personal reasons, you could say individual memories that you're putting first really in your life, but substantially that's not the problem. The problem is that love of God isn't first. Because if love of God was first, can you see whatever was inside of me, I would be able to deal with. Now, it might not be immediately deal with, right? Because there are some things inside of me that are tough to address. They're going to take time. Then I'm never going to get to the stage where I go, oh, it's all too hard now, I'm going to stop. Right? Because if you got God first in your life, you don't stop until everything's done. Everything.
That's a beautiful, consistent thing.
Yeah. You also, as a result of that, it's really interesting what happens in your life, Matt, because it's like you become a consistent person in everything you choose to do. You also become consistent in a relationship, right? You also end up attracting your soulmate. There's a lot of other benefits because of the consistency of putting God first. Your changes that you make will be sincere, and you'll come into this place where you'll come to understand, like, more and more and more how many rewards there are from putting God first, right? So a part of the reason, which we need to put into these columns, is that we don't really have faith that loving God first brings other loves. We don't have that faith. We think if you put God first and then there's a problem in the relationship, say, between myself and Mary, and I'm putting God first, I think, well, our relationship's going to break up if I do that. Eventually, she'll be upset with me about putting God first because I put God before her with one thing. And if that happens, then I've got a choice. I'll either continue to put God first or choose to put Mary first. Now, if I put Mary first, not only have I broken my love relationship with God, which brings me all these other things, but also now, if Mary's demand for that love first is corrupted in any way, and it would be because she doesn't feel that I should put God first, then I am going to become corrupt in the process of my love of her. So you end up with all these things happening as well. Right? And we don't realise they're happening most of the time. Yeah. And this is why it's such an important thing to sort of discuss and talk about. Yeah. Graham?
Spirit guide and you, with the influences they have on us, they still come in through our memories, our emotional memories, right?
That's right, yeah. So spirit guide. So you could say, can we just not have spirit guide? Because there's also lots of other spirits, isn't there, other than our guide, who also are external influence upon us. But again, if we've got all these memories and judgment of self and worth issues and we're not obeying God's laws and that, it is very hard for spirits to influence us positively. And they can really only influence us negatively. And the only spirits who want to influence us negatively are the spirits usually who are in codependent addiction with us or who want to make your life as hard as possible. So they are the influences you're going to get under those circumstances. And because of the pressure that we were just talking about before with Matt that comes upon us and we're not loving God first, anytime we're under any pressure from these external influences, we're going to go, I'm giving up now. I'm giving up putting God first now for the sake of my own sanity or the sake of my own pleasure, or the sake of just avoiding some pain.
Like what I notice with my own guide
Yep.
is that there's certain things that I'm not open to.
You mean the person you believe is your guide?
Yes.
Yeah. Because there's a big difference between those two things, I must say.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's certain things that I'm not open to receiving from my guide.
Lots of things.
And just as there's certain things I'm not open to receiving from you. So
Yep.
I see you as just as another one of my guides.
Yep.
And I see how there are things that I'm not open to.
Yep.
Both from my guide and from you.
That's right. Which are to do with the memories in the primarily.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff.
That's right.
But I don't have any idea how to deal with that.
Well, that's not strictly true, Graham, because your guide and myself have shared with you lots of techniques of dealing with that. So you've got to really start the question, do you want to deal with that? And so there's two issues with dealing with something. One is, how much desire do you have to deal with it? Now, if your love of God was first, your desire to deal with anything would be very strong. It would be first in your life. But for you, that is not the case yet, right? So you've got to then say, well, if that's not the case yet, what is driving me? Like what you would like to say to yourself is that it's too hard. I don't know what to do, and all of those things. But there's plenty of things I haven't known what to do, and I've eventually worked out how to do them. So if you put God first, you will find that you'll work out how to do them, and you'll get help to do them. The problem that you face is that you don't like the methods being presented to you to deal with them. And that's a lot to do with the pain associated with your memories.
I've realised for a long time that it's all about desire and lack of desire.
Yep.
And so the question is how do I deal with a soul-based desire or lack of desire or desire not to with my brain,
Well, that's a big part of your problem, isn't it?
Yes.
You're trying, And at this stage, you've got a very dominant mind. You know that about yourself, don't you?
Yes.
So, and many men, by the way, have this problem too, in particular men, but it's becoming more of a problem even with women now, because women are sort of mimicking men a lot on earth today in terms of what is good versus what is bad, you know. And there's a lot of discrediting of a woman's natural feeling process in the world that we see. A lot of the world pulls down the woman's natural ability, so they're pulling down the experience of emotion. And so we end up being very dominant in our mind. Now, in that place, we're starting to, our feelings are saying, use your mind to selectively deny whatever is going to open up the soul. Basically, that's what's going on. Your mind is saying, I don't want to open up my soul. My soul's pain. I've got pain in my soul that I'm going to have to experience, and I don't want to experience it, so now the mind's going to, what can I do to avoid it? And one of the things you can do in your mind is to just continually use your mind, thinking day and night, try to resolve everything in your mind. And trust me, I've been there. I know what that feels like to do, because I was so afraid of facing some basic emotion. In other words, I was afraid of facing my own soul's feelings. Right? So the fundamental problem is not that you don't know, it's that you don't want to face some pain in your feelings. And you're using your mind to filter all of that pain out by reasoning with yourself out of it, reasoning out of it.
I think I'm aware of that, at least at some level.
Yep.
But the issue is that...
Can I say though, you say you're aware, but if you're putting God first, can you see that awareness would have already turned into action?
Yes, I know I'm not putting God first.
Yep. So are you aware? So, see, at the moment, awareness requires that you understand the full consequence of a bad decision. You follow me? Now, it's a bad decision to use your mind to avoid your emotions.
Yes.
It's a bad decision.
Yes.
So you said you were aware, but I just want to say no, you're not aware, because you're not yet seeing the full consequence of that bad decision.
That's why I said I'm only partially aware. I'm aware with this, but not with this.
You're not even
aware with this.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, because your mind is saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it.
You're
saying to yourself, you have to do it,
yeah.
which is not the same as saying, I want to do it, in your mind. So you're not even aware with this, right? And this is something that you've got to understand.
Can I give an analogy, Graham? You know, if someone was to say to you, or you were to think, oh, if I get up and drink a flagon of wine every day, you'd go, that'd be a pretty bad decision on my part. That wouldn't end well for the rest of my life. You could see that, couldn't you? You'd feel that.
In
but
your
also,
current state, you could see that. But if you're a drunkard, you might not see that.
No, but for the purpose of, because I know you're not a drinker, you're a clean living person.
Yeah.
You would never even intellectually think that's a good idea. You would think that is going to lead to my ruination.
Yeah.
You would, even with your intellect.
Yeah.
What Jesus is trying to say to you, that even with your intellect, you still don't see that me suppressing all of my memories and not having them is going to lead to my ruination. You don't think that.
There's still a feeling that it's a good thing.
Yeah. So that's what he's trying to help you see. It's a ruination you're heading to.
For me, it keeps coming back to desire.
Well,
No.
see, now you're not really
So now you're
seeking
using
an
your
answer.
mind to avoid, and now the point, any further point to the conversation with you is pointless, because it's sort of like, we're trying to inform you what the problem is, and you keep saying, no, it's a different problem. And I'm going,
Okay.
no, Graham, the problem is that you are not prepared emotionally to go through a really, really bad experience.
So how do I get prepared?
Well, that's something we've got to talk about in this process, isn't it? Yeah. But if you look at all the information that I've already presented in the last 20 years, there's a huge amount of information about how you get prepared.
So, like, when I try to implement stuff that you've told me to do,
Yep.
I end up rebelling against myself.
Correct. So what is the real self wanting?
Well, I realise that I didn't really want it, and that's why I rebel against myself. So that's why I said desire.
And what is it you don't really want?
I don't want to feel it. That pain
Why don't you want feeling? So how do you change an opinion? And we've talked about this a lot with lots of different people worldwide. How do you change something that is causing you problems, but you still feel quite dedicated to doing it? There's a whole heap of ways to do it, isn't there? Firstly, you've got to see the negative and the positive in the thing you're doing. So at the moment, you're measuring not having feelings as a positive.
Not in.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not a question.
If you thought it was a negative, you wouldn't be trying to not have feelings anymore.
Yeah.
And you'd be thinking every day, this is
if I really wanted it, I'd be doing it.
Well,
no,
yes.
but also, even if you weren't yet doing it, you'd be thinking, this is terrible that I'm not having
See, you don't even think
You
that
don't
yet.
think that, no.
In your feelings, your feeling is it's a good thing to suppress your emotion, because emotions are tough, they're hard, they're all associated with, and who knows what, in particular for you, it's like, who knows what's going to happen to Graham if he starts feeling? It's going to be messy.
Yeah.
It's going to be, how am I going to live my life?
Yeah.
In this state where I'm feeling my bad stuff all the time.
Yeah.
It's going to be messy.
Yeah.
And you're afraid of big messes.
Yeah.
Right? You know that. So it's sort of like, there's a lot of judgment that you retain inside of yourself about the emotional process. And that judgment, it is saying, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing to go there. So on one hand, Graham in his mind is trying to tell himself, you need to do it, mate. You need to do it. You know, your own mind is saying this, as you know. Your own mind is going, I need to do it. I need to do it. But it's not I want to, because in the want to, you have to deal with the fact this is going to get messy. It may not turn out the way you think. It may not be as controlled as you've had your life up until now, because you've had a lot of control over your life now, and you've still got a lot of control over your life, and it might not be controlled anymore. You know, and all of the potential mess that you're thinking you're afraid of, like what's going to happen to my life, and that's a lot to do with the fact that you don't yet trust God either, that He will nurse you, you know, keep you through
I'm
the
not
process.
just afraid of that, I'm terrified of that.
Correct. Yeah. Well, that's what I mean when I say afraid. And you're so terrified of it that you, even in your mind, you think that's the thing to do, but it's not going to get done yet until you release some of the terror. And for many of you, you don't even know how to release terror yet, because the terror feeling is such a bad feeling that you don't want to have it. And so you don't want to, like, you're full of terror, all of which are based on false beliefs, but you don't want to let them go yet, because the feeling of terror feels bad when you feel it. It does feel bad. Like, I've gone through a lot of it. It feels bad.
I can recognise terror in myself, which only happens very rarely,
Yeah.
when I immediately want to run away.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's like there's no possibility of even considering dealing with it, you know? It's like the motive is so strong.
Correct. So this is what I'm saying. You're loving your terror first.
It's an incredibly powerful motive.
Yeah.
But see what you're doing here, Graham, you're reinforcing to yourself. This is what I mean with even your thoughts are not really yet, I need to have these feelings. It's this is too hard for me, this is a problem with doing this. This is your thoughts.
I'm so terrified that I'm never going to be able to cope with that level of terror. Is what you believe.
Yeah.
Now, this is a false belief. God designed you to cope with everything, including terror. It's a false belief, but you're reinforcing the untruth to yourself here. You're saying, no, the terror is so bad that I've just got to run away from it every time.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to, like, imagine if terror was a wall here. I'm not even going to put myself up against the wall, you know. Even that, I'm just going to turn around and get away from it, you know.
Only twice have I ever managed to stay in the terror, you know, and that was with prayer and with what you've said about God never gives us anything that we can't deal with.
So can you see, you already know the way to deal with it,
Yeah.
but you just haven't yet, like, understood that you can keep doing that and get through it.
Yeah. Well, it's happened twice in the last year or so.
Great.
And I've gone, well, this is great. I've actually managed to get through something that I've never succeeded in getting through before. You know.
Yeah.
But I'm still terrified of feeling the terror.
Yes, and once you get through the terror of feeling terror, then obviously feeling terror is going to be much easier.
Yeah.
But can you see, you also said how you got through it. By praying a lot and, and by setting your intent to do it. And by just understanding that actually, no, God's got me, even though I feel no one's got me. So by telling yourself some truths, in other words.
And I found that when I did manage to do that, it was surprising how quickly I got through it.
Exactly.
It was amazing.
That's right. So you just need to do that more.
Yeah.
And see, if you put God first, you'll choose to do that more. So at the moment, as you know, because you're not putting God first, you go, well, that was good to do that, but I don't know if I want to do it again.
Yeah.
And again, and again, and again, until it's done.
Yeah.
When I'm loving God first, I go, I'm doing this until it's clear to me that there's no terror in me preventing my relationship with God anymore. That's how long I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Well, I have, I guess you've still got to talk about God.
We have to talk about each of these things.
Yeah, because I don't really have a good idea of what God is.
True, and I feel a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
And in fact, people who've been listening to Divine Truth for many, many years do not have a loving concept of God.
Yeah.
They have a very unloving concept of God frequently.
Yeah.
So that is very true, and we need to talk more about God. And one of the things Mary and I are trying to do when we're travelling is talking more with people individually. In the groups we've been having at home, we've been talking about God a lot in terms of God's nature, God's personality, what God desires for you, all those things, just to help people build their faith in God's nature.
Yeah, well, if I can't get a handle on God, how can I be a friend with God, and how can I love God if I can't get some sort of feeling for what God is?
And even desire love from God.
Yes.
You can't even do that, can you?
Because I've got an emotional injury where the love I got from my mother was very needy,
Can I just
and I
stop
pushed
you,
her away.
Graham? Yeah, now we're just talking about your emotions.
Yeah,
so,
sorry.
Yeah. So we're
So
trying to
we're
set the
trying
scene
to
here
teach
for everybody.
Yeah.
And you're right in what you're saying.
Yep.
But maybe just if you from what we've already heard, or from what we've already said to you, and if you listen to this again, you'll see you already know how to do this. And you said earlier you didn't know how to do it, but I'm saying to you, no, Graham, you do know how to do this. You just haven't wanted to do it enough yet.
So I've had two experiences where I've worked through terror. But how do it's not an enjoyable experience. I don't desire to have that experience again. But if my law of attraction brings it to me, I think I will be able to perhaps do with it what I did last time, because it's worked twice.
Yeah, and that's not going to work.
Okay.
Yeah. Because if you just wait for the law of attraction to bring it, with the amount of control you've got over your life, you are going to, whenever the law of attraction brings you something, and it's not your law, it's the law of attraction, attracting to your feelings and trying to help you with your memories. But when that happens, you are reluctantly going through something.
Yeah.
Whenever a person is reluctant, they do enough to just lessen the pain enough, and then they stop.
Yeah.
That's not going to be enough.
Okay.
Enough is it's all gone.
Yeah.
That's enough.
Yeah.
Anything other than that is not going to work. Right? So you've got to get out of this thing of, I'm just going to wait for my law of attraction. I'm being gentle with myself. I'm just going to wait for the law of attraction. You're going to have a more proactive view than that. Now, if you loved God first, you would have a more proactive view than that. But when you don't love God first and you love your terror first, you will have a very low sense of dealing with things to the point of them being done.
Well, when I love my avoidance of terror.
Correct. Well, you're loving your terror first. You're nursing your terror.
Okay.
Can you understand? Like you're nursing it like a baby, so you're loving it. Like it's a distorted view of love, but you're nursing it like, this is my terror. I need to keep it in me. That's you loving terror first, not the avoidance of it.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and you need to see that about yourself. That it's not that you're just loving your avoidance. You are loving the terror. You are keeping it in you. A person who loves things keeps the thing in themselves. So if I love Mary, I want her close to me, right? you love your terror so much, you want it close to you. You want it in you. You know, if you didn't love your terror that much, you would want to let it go, right? Instead of keep it in you. So again, there's a lot of, you could say your intellect is telling you one thing, but there's actually a thing going on emotionally. And this is something that you do need to address.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we can